Hello and welcome back to Josh Davidson Books, my author channel where I'm continuing my reread of my very first novel, Werewolves Hide, as part of my ongoing work and preparation for writing the sequel, Book 2. And essentially, I'm reading the chapters to you out loud and interrupting with random thoughts that I have, commentary thoughts that I have, and like behind the scenes information as far as what my thought process was when I was writing particular chapters or scenes. If you enjoy this chapter or have enjoyed any chapters, please consider buying the book. It's only $4.99 for the digital version, and I do have a link in the description of this video. And if you do buy it and like it, please, review it on Amazon. It's a big help, and I am working on the sequel. So I need all the help that I can get to make people care. So we are on chapter 16, where we last left off. There was kind of the big revelation that the missing door from Madison's wrecked car was buried deep underground in Lacey's dad's backyard. And if that doesn't get you fired up, I don't know what will. All right, here we go. Chapter 16. Inside Joe's diner, it's a calm afternoon with only a few people seated at the various bar stools and booths. Lacey serves an elderly woman a slice of pie at the lunch bar. The woman squints through her red-framed glasses to make certain the whipped cream on top looks just right. She's elated. "Oh, thank you, Lacey. It looks so delicious." "You're welcome, darling," Lacey responds warm-heartedly. "One of these days it'll say Lacey's Diner up there. It's a crock of S. It doesn't already. If you want the swears and all the really good language, just buy the book." The woman is fired up on Lacey's behalf. Lacey laughs. "Oh, that's sweet of you. One day, maybe, one day." So, I'm trying not to provide future spoilers in case people are using this, but part of the fun of the commentary is assuming you've already read it. So spoilers for the ending of the book right now. If you like the story and you don't want things spoiled, full spoiler warning right now. Until I wave at the camera again, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching the video. So at the end of the story, it does say Lacey's Diner, but how that worked and how I wrote it was, I got to the end, I got to the epilogue, and I realized, oh, I should tease this, I should foreshadow this, I should, bring this up earlier in the book. And so I came back and I added this little interaction before the Hank and Bo interaction of them sitting down at the restaurant, because I wanted to give a little, again, a little bit more sweetening of really liking Lacey, and then also just kind of foreshadowing that ending. So I added this retroactively. This chapter, when it first started, it just started with her coming up to the table with Bo and Hank. Okay, spoilers are done. If you're listening or watching, spoilers are done. I'm waving at the camera. Your spoiler's over. Okay. As they finish their interaction in one of the booths toward the front of the lobby, Bo is sitting with his dad, Hank. They pick at a few remaining fries on mostly empty plates as they finish their milkshakes. After finishing their meal, Hank can finally scold Bo like he has been waiting to do. He whispers angrily, "That can never happen again. Ever." Bo slurps with a "who, me?" look on his face. "What do you mean?" Hank looks over his shoulder and aggressively points up to the small muted television playing news in the corner. It's another Blue Ridge news report showing cell phone footage of the day Bo ran through town in his full wolf form. It's shaky and slightly blurry, but it absolutely captured him standing on the roof as he howled and leapt away. Bo smiles at himself on the television. "I look pretty effing cool." Hank isn't impressed. "I'm serious." Bo scoffs it off. "Everyone knows that's fake. They'll put anything on TV." Hank leans in further. "That'll work for the dimwits and nihilists, but anyone with half a brain will continue to research and eventually find you out. Find us out. Find everyone. That can't happen, or it's a genocide. So show some respect." Bo finishes his shake and sets it down, leaning down face to face with Hank. "I'll never respect you, ever, but you were right about what was going to happen to me, so I'll use you. I'm happy to use you to learn what I need to, so get on with it." Hank sits up and relaxes a little bit. He looks around to make sure no one is paying attention before he starts to share more information with Bo, but Lacey comes over just before he can begin. She mostly ignores Hank and gives him barely a side-eye glare as she talks to Bo. "Need any water or anything, honey?" Bo quickly responds, "No, I'm good, thanks. I'm going to get out of here soon and go clean the house. Hope it stays slow like this. So your shift ends easy?" Slow doesn't pay the bills, but I appreciate it. She takes a lighthearted dig at him. Bo rubs her baby belly and talks right at her stomach. Stop kicking mama's behind. She needs to be able to be comfortable while she works. Okay, sweetie? He kisses her stomach, and Lacey looks around, slightly embarrassed. She pushes his head back. So that's something that, as a parent myself, and just things that I've kind of learned and absorbed through osmosis, is that when you're pregnant, people really assume that they're just kind of allowed to just touch your belly. And there have been really nice people who've been like, oh, can I have permission to feel the baby kick or something like that? But I've seen and heard about experiences of a lot of people not asking permission and just assuming, oh, because you're pregnant, I'm allowed to touch you. So obviously Bo is allowed to touch her because it's Bo. He's the dad. They're in love with each other. But it's still a time and place thing. Like, she's at work. It's the diner. It's not, Bo does not always think about what is appropriate. And so I thought that was a fun little addition. All right, I'm off soon. Leave me be. Lacey goes back to the front register. Since the coast is clear, Hank continues. Number 1, you can't tell her. Bo is still looking at Lacey as she walks away. Nah, I tell her everything. That's a no-go. These aren't suggestions, Bo. They're rules. Rules that have kept our kind alive for a long time. We can't share what we are with anyone. Mom knows what you are, and so do I. So right away you're full of it. Hank gets assertive. The situation with your mom and I, it's complicated and none of your business. Secondly, I'm taking a very big risk, a life-threatening risk, trying to guide you because my guilt outweighs my fear. Bo slightly accepts and continues. Well, what happens when Lacey sees me change? I don't got to tell her anything for her to see there's a giant wolf watching baseball in the living room. You control it. You don't let her see you. We have urges and impulses, but by and large, you are in control. It's like getting thirsty or needing to go to the bathroom, or Bo is very crass, we'll say. What about adult time? Hank rolls his eyes and continues. Yes, exactly. It's a natural part of you. So it's important that you pay attention to your cycles and realize how regularly you need to change. Once you get it down, it's quite easy to manage. You go for a walk, you go fishing, you go to the grocery store. Anywhere you need to be alone, you can change. Bo continues his curiosity. Okay, but when I wake up naked at Sadie Vulcani, aren't I going to have a lot of explaining to do? Won't she find out then? It only goes that far. So first of all, I'm going to interrupt right now. So this was one of the scenes that I had in my head for years. And like when I was absorbing and putting together the werewolf rules, the rules of the world, intermittently over the course of several years while I wrote and directed other movies, this is literally like how I would explain the werewolf rules to close family members and friends, right? Like I would be like, here's what the wolves do, and here's how it's different in my book or in my story, in my movie when it was going to be a movie. Here's how it's different, and here's why that happens. And so I basically just took a real life experience explaining the werewolf rules to real people and made that Hank explaining the werewolf rules to Bo. So I always was really excited to have this kind of big sit down, let's talk about werewolves portion of the story. I thought that would always be fun. So Hank continues. It only goes that far if you take too long to change. You don't become a full wolf when you're on a regular schedule. You gain a lot of the benefits, but retain a mostly human form and still have your consciousness. It's when you go too long, when you suppress and fight it for more than you should, that's when you get lost. You will only operate on instinct. Your humanity does not exist in that mode, but you'll remember. You'll remember what you did. The memories and the guilt are what stays when you come back. So I really wanted to, again, try to create drama, try to create intrigue, and try to create rules that allowed for fun and memorable scenarios and a little bit of a risk reward, Something that I think kind of takes away from the specialness of other stories is like when heroes can be heroes all the time. A superhero can go put on their costume and then just be the superhero. And depending on what the story is, maybe they rely on their suit and tech for assistance, or maybe they're kind of naturally superheroic and then the costume is just because it was a comic book or whatever, right? And so for me, I loved the idea of, what if you couldn't just turn it on? What if you had to plan for it, schedule for it? And what if, your enemies, if they found out your true identity, could try to start, keeping track of when you last changed to hit you when you're most vulnerable? Things like that. I wanted to create, dramatic scenarios. And so with the rules that I created, I explored some of the biggest ones in this first book because I always had, there's always ideas rolling around in my head, whether it's, sequels to this book or brand new book ideas altogether or whatever. So you never know what the future is going to hold. So I didn't hold anything back. I put as much as I could into this book. But there's definitely still room to manipulate and have fun with the rules of this world, which is part of the reasons why I'm writing a sequel. Let's see. So Bo is thinking about the werewolf stories he's seen and been told. So it's not like in the movies where if we're in the moonlight we change? Hank nods in the affirmative. Correct. It enhances it like an aphrodisiac. I'd be cautious about full moons and wide open spaces for extended periods of time. You might get pretty messed up. But otherwise, no, for the most part, that's a myth. And whoever used this gift for that type of personal gain should be ashamed of themselves. There's a little bit of a meta commentary in there where essentially Hank is saying, the fact that normal humans have ever even heard of werewolves and are seeing werewolves in any form of entertainment at all means that somebody said something they shouldn't have said and risked their lives and the lives of other wolf family members and friends by trying to share kind of the magical and mystical world of being a werewolf for entertainment. And so the mere fact that you're reading a book about it is like, it's a dig at the book even existing. It's a little bit of a meta-ness there. So Hank calls it a gift, and Bo says, "You mean curse." Bo is not convinced his current situation is a positive one. Hank is very defensive. Bo, it's not a curse to be who you are. Your full potential will never be realized until you're true to yourself, and I'm speaking from experience. Yeah, me too, Bo chimes back. Hank shakes his head. Listen, it's a lot to take in a short amount of time. You'll come around the more you learn and the more comfortable you get, but I'm serious, you need to change regularly. You don't just lose your mind the longer you wait. You get stronger too. Bo contemplates this new information and looks out the window before asking his next question. Are vampires real? He asks flippantly, expecting a confirmation. Don't be ridiculous. Hank shuts the possibility down and then goes to the end of the conversation. That was like, I don't know, that's one of my favorite jokes in the book because of all the insanity that we've seen with the same wolf, 20 years apart and a wolf taking their own head off and, Bo saying that they're werewolves and Bo changing himself and then running through town, like all of the crazy stuff that has happened in the story so far. Hank just being like, oh, don't be ridiculous. Like, I just thought that was really funny. And then Hank says one last thing. Bo nods okay that he is listening. Hank continues, your birthmark. I know you have one. We all do. That's your change point. It's where your transformation always starts and ends. Be mindful not to reveal it if at all possible. It's your only weakness when you're in full wolf form. If someone knows that, they can use it against you and kill you as a wolf, which is very, very not good. Bo is exhausted from the information and exhales. And why is that? Well, firstly, your family won't get a funeral for any type of closure. And honestly, more importantly, Hank leans in one last time. They'll steal your hide. So now, finally, 2/3 of the way through the book, if you didn't figure it out already, there's a double meaning to the title. It's not just that werewolves are in hiding. They are. But there's also story elements of if a werewolf dies in wolf form, then that wolf hide can be taken and be used. So that was something that obviously I was really proud of and really happy with. And so that's how it was not. I can't remember. I think the first story was always called Werewolves Hide, because for a long time this was going to be movies, but it got so big and so fantastical I'd never be able to make it. So that's why I decided to write a book, so that I would have an unlimited budget and I wouldn't have to sacrifice the fantastical elements, the big ideas, that I could just let people's imagination be the budget. Anyway, a lot of the titles have since changed now that the story is real. Okay, so it's a little later now. At dusk, Bo and Hank pull into Denise's driveway in Bo's truck. Bo turns the engine off and gets out right away. He starts to walk toward Lacey's, but Hank stops him. Hey, wait a sec, I got you something. Hank motions for Bo to come with him inside. Denise's. Bo hesitates but proceeds to turn around and come back. Before they get to the door, Bo thinks of another question. Hang on real quick. You said my change point was my weakness. Do I have any others I need to worry about? Hank has his hand on the front doorknob but stops and turns to answer. Well, when you're not changed as a person, you're just another guy. So if someone finds out what you are, they could hurt you when you're like this, or your family. Bo looks over at Lacey's trailer thinking of her. What about when I'm a wolf? Hank responds, Not really, no. We're abnormally strong. Breathing, I guess? Hank ponders this for a moment, then goes inside. So he just mentions that even, as a werewolf, as strong as you appear and as unbeatable as you may appear, you're still a breathing biological animal, so you have to be able to breathe. The reason that this little extra tidbit of like werewolf trivia or werewolf rules was shared here and not at the diner when we had the big sit down was because that scene was just going on too long. We were sitting still in one place, having a conversation back and forth, and it was interesting, but it was starting to overstay its welcome when I was writing it. And so I was like, well, let's break it up, let's change scenes, let's go home, and then I'll add one or two more little bits of information just so it's not so cluttered in one spot. And then the other reason is that like that last rule point about needing to breathe is a very significant rule point that I wanted to separate from the rest of the wall of rules, hoping that it might stand out in people's minds because it was literally given its own side conversation. Because later, obviously, with water and everything, that comes into play. Within Denise's trailer, that old familiar orange haze permeates the air. She sits in the same recliner as she always does next to her medical equipment. Hank jogs past her to run toward the back. Denise addresses Bo without looking up from the television. You boys have a nice little effing lunch? She is aggressive and dismissive, per usual. It was fine. It was lunch. Bo doesn't see what the big deal is. Oh, good. I'm glad. That's so sweet. I think I might need my insulin. Her sarcasm is far from subtle. Hank comes running back to the living room from the back bedroom. He's holding a small, shoebox-sized gift wrapped in newspaper. He excitedly hands it over to Bo. It's nothing major. Hank sits down. Bo isn't quite sure how to respond. He looks at his mom, then at his dad. He's never gotten a gift from either of them before, let alone while they were both sitting in the same room. He stares at them suspiciously as he slowly and cautiously opens the present. The newspapers drift toward the floor as the lid of the shoebox drops like a lead weight past them, landing before the papers do. He drops the rest of the wrapping and is left holding a set of clothes. It's a pair of clean brown slacks and a white collared shirt. I just thought with how you've been trying to get things on track, you might want some nice clothes, too. Hank adjusts his own collar to reference the type of clothing that he wears. Bo is defensive. There's nothing wrong with my clothes. He doesn't even really believe himself when he says it as he looks down at his torn blue jeans and stained white t-shirt while adjusting his backward baseball hat. Hank doesn't want to hurt his feelings. Oh, no, absolutely not. I'm saying if there's ever a time where you might want clothes like that, but didn't want to worry about getting them yourself, either for a nice job in the future or a sweet date with your beautiful girl and that grandbaby. In a glimpse of Bo's future or imagination, Bo is suddenly wearing the dress clothes his dad gave him. He's sitting in a fancy restaurant at a candlelit table while Lacey is sitting across from him in a cute white sundress decorated with yellow flowers. They laugh as they try to feed their baby in her high chair, but food spills on the white tablecloth. It's immediately cleaned up by the restaurant staff, and the band comes over to serenade the family as they finish their meal together. Bo snaps out of it and comes back to the trailer living room. So, making the decision to make it third-person non-omniscient and make it essentially a novelized version of a film, a movie that you're reading, it's hard to do certain things. There's certain limitations with that, as entertaining and rewarding as this format has been. For me, anyway, in my opinion. A little biased. And one of those things is that you can't really get inside a character's head the way you normally can in a book. And I'm fine with that because I wanted my book to be special and different and whatever. But I still wanted an opportunity to kind of, again, see what some characters were thinking or see what they're fantasizing about. So literally just going to the scene. Like, Bo is handed these clothes, and then if you were watching a movie, you'd immediately see him sitting in a restaurant wearing them. But in book form, you're just you're told, whether it's a vision or an imagination or a glimpse of the future, we don't know what he's seeing, but I wanted you to read what Bo was seeing so that you could see why he would accept the gift. He comes back to the trailer living room. He gulps and looks at Hank. Thank you. The words will themselves out of him in a soft whisper. It pains him to say it, but he can't deny the gratitude this singular moment fills him with. Denise is suddenly, and maybe expectedly, livid. Well, ain't you all one big effing family? Matching clothes, running around at night, and eating lunch together. Now we got ourselves a birthday boy. Bo's getting worried. Mom, calm down. Denise starts straight up out of her chair, barely covering herself up with a large, oversized nightgown and the Afghan blanket that generally sits on the couch. Her medical equipment stretches and strains to stay connected to her as she slowly marches toward Bo. Hank stands up and tries to help her sit down. Get the F off me. When I want to stand, I stand. She pushes his hands back so he backs off. Her rant continues. The birthday boy, who doesn't show a single ounce of gratefulness for his mother bringing him into this godforsaken world. You tell him about his real birthday, Hank? Denise darts her hateful eyes towards Hank, who nervously shakes his head no. Well, maybe it's time he learned, since he's learning so good lately. She stopped. I was really proud of that dialogue of calling back to when we first met her. She stops where she stands and looks over at Hank. Tell him, you spineless weasel, or I will. Hank slowly sits back down in the chair and wipes nervous sweat beads from his temple. He reluctantly looks up at Bo to begin his story. And then we have a scene cut to the night of Bo's birth. And when I originally came up with this concept of explaining where Denise's rage comes from, it was going to be just Hank explaining it, telling his story, like Hank admitting to Bo about his past. But then I thought, I'm writing a book. We're in a novel. There's no budget. I don't have to secure a location. I don't have to shortcut or cheese this story. Let's just watch the story. Let's just go there. Let's just flashback. So we went back to the night of Bo's birth, because we can do whatever we want in a book. So, it's over 20 years ago. Denise and Hank look much younger. They're in a slightly different trailer as Denise lays naked in the bathtub, giving birth to Bo. Lightning and thunder crashes and cackles amidst a violent thunderstorm. Flashes of white can be seen flickering in and out of the small window in the bathroom. About a foot of water is in the bottom of the tub, but it all looks like blood already. Hank sits on the toilet and holds Denise's hands as she lets out horrifying screams, crying as she stares at the ceiling. Her stomach is moving violently, with several sharp protrusions scraping the surface from the inside, ready to poke through at any moment. There's a pounding on the front of the trailer door as Hank tries to leave to answer it. Denise refuses to let go of his hand, so he's forced to yell loudly from the bathroom. Yes, doctor, we're in here, he shouts toward the front. The trailer door opens and slams shut under the screams as the doctor runs full speed through the trailer to the back. He's about 15 years older than Hank and has a scar on his chin shaped like an X. When he gets to the bathroom, he sets down the bag full of medical equipment he was carrying and opens it. Seeing the claws trying to breach Denise's skin makes him gulp so hard he almost swallows his tongue. Lightning flickers across the bathroom as the doctor nervously gathers his utensils. They include large metallic tong-like extensions that are about 18 inches long, a syringe full of numbing medicine, and a separate syringe full of sedatives. Behind him in the rest of the bag, sewing utensils and gauze intended for sutures are ready to be used. The doctor gets as close to the tub's edge as he can as the flesh between Denise's legs starts tearing. The doctor's eyes enlarge in fear while Denise lets out a final, echoing screech as the scraping and howling of little baby wolf Bo can be heard clawing out. What a scene. Definitely a highlight for me as the person who wrote it. I just loved the scene so much. I was so mad. So I don't know, 2 or 3 months after the book came out, I saw a commercial for a werewolf show on Apple TV, and it showed a mom going into labor, and I was livid. I was so mad. I'm come on, I just wrote a scene like that in my book. Please, somebody, If you ever read this book, please look up that the book came out before that show came out. I'm begging you. Because, yeah, I really like this scene. And, it adds to, it really explains a lot. Well, let's keep going. So that explains a portion of maybe why Denise doesn't have the highest opinion of her own child, of having to endure a really special labor. So now we're come back to present day. Hank whimpers and covers his mouth with his hand as he finishes telling his gruesome tale. He looks embarrassed and ashamed to have done what he did and to have to relive it today. Denise adds the exclamation point to the story. On the day you were born, and if you would like to appreciate the exquisiteness of Denise's vulgarity, I highly recommend that you buy the book for $4.99. In my opinion, it's worth it. Denise drops her blanket and lifts her shirt, exposing the lower half of her naked body. Bo and Hank instinctively try to cover their eyes, but Denise insists. Look at me. Look what you did to me, you slobbering hounds. Denise cries as she screams at them. Bo looks through his fingers and sees that his mom has no genitals. Instead, she has dozens of crooked scars from surgeries and scratch marks between her legs, going up across her stomach. Her crying and anger continue as she talks. 9 months! 9 months of clawing and scratching and biting inside of me, not being allowed to go to the doctor, bleeding to death for your life. I finally thought he just needs to get out. He just needs out of me, and it'll be okay. And I thought when I finally did get a doctor to help me, that was a good thing. But the next thing I know, I'm sewn up like a rag doll, fit for a gutter, and old Daddy Wolf runs off with the doctor to join the circus. Bo looks over at Hank. Is that true? I was born a wolf, and then you left? Hank sighs and glares at Denise with resentment. None of this helps you. Knowing it just causes more pain, and that's not what I came back to do. Bo is getting fed up. Well, it's out now, so might as well effing say it. Hank straightens his shirt and cleans the wrinkles off his sleeves. Fair enough. Yes, you were born changed, which is why she knew, or how she confirmed what she suspected, given your testy pregnancy. Denise scoffs at his understatement of the century. She rolls her eyes and looks away to bite her tongue. Hank continues. When the labor began, I realized it was worse than I thought. I'd been speaking with a doctor to try and work on my dependencies, so he was the closest person I could trust with what he might see. And so, yes, I was in and out of the house for a few years after that, right about up until your accident. But even before I left, I was already gone. Hank clears his throat to fight back the lump building in his throat. That's too many words. Too many words. We're learning. Denise is sitting back down and has covered herself up. She restrains her emotions as she finishes sharing her pain. So if y'all want to up and leave and go be monsters together, I say good riddance and to heck with yous both. Bo is dumbfounded at these revelations and is overwhelmed with thoughts and emotions. He looks at the fresh new clothes he's holding in his hand and shakes them while he scoffs. He nods like he should have known a good thing couldn't happen without the drama to follow it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you psychopaths hash out whatever it is you need to. And I'm going to go get ready to cook my pregnant girlfriend dinner. And try not to think about what you just told me the whole time. Maybe ever again. Bo turns around and slams the trailer's front door as he leaves. Hank and Denise sit silently as they try to recover from the past they just had to relive. Man, what a chapter. A lot of things happen in that chapter. We get the foreshadowing of the Lacey conversation, and we get the Hank and Bo sit down explaining the werewolf rules in the restaurant. We get Bo gets a present from his parents, which is a very nice brown slacks and a very nice white collared shirt, which may come up again later. And then we get the story of the night of Bo's birth, which is harrowing, is violent, and is uncomfortable at times, and all the things I like to put in stories. So the one thing that what I was going to say, what was I going to say at the end there? I already forgot because we got away from it. Oh, the character of Denise. So my hope now is, now that you kind of understand their backstory and the background a little bit, you could see why Denise would hold such a grudge against both of them and then actually feel genuinely hurt after everything she put herself through, after all the sacrifices she made in her life for her body, that this guy, that Hank, just comes strolling right back into town and thinks he's going to be dad to Bo when he didn't have a thing to do raising him. And now they're both being buddy-buddy because they're both wolves together, and she's the only one that isn't a wolf, so she feels left out. Like, I just was really happy with kind of that characterization and the interpersonal conflict that exists within their family. Yeah, so who knows? The next chapter is, in my opinion, one of the funnest chapters in the book. It's a little bit more lighthearted than some of the subject matter, but that was for a reason, because I knew we did not have much time before we were going to start getting into the third act and the climax, and all of the dramatic stuff was going to start falling into place. So I wanted to have a little bit, one more night of levity and one more night with characters before, things really went bad. So if you liked this chapter or you have enjoyed this book at all, please consider buying it. It's only $4.99 for the digital version. I'm rereading this book specifically as a part of my research for writing the sequel. There is a sequel that I've been working on for quite some time, and I'll share more about that in the future. If you are curious about following my author endeavors long term in general, follow this channel, like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. If you do comment, please no spoilers or a healthy spoiler warning, and try to keep the comments relegated to this chapter that we just read. As always, thank you for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next video.